Good morning. Welcome to Seattle Atheist Church. At Seattle Atheist Church, you'll never hear anything supernatural promoted from the podium. That's why we call ourselves an atheist church. But atheist, agnostic, secular humanist, whatever you like to call yourself, you are welcome here. I'd like to say our creed, just for people who are new and may not have heard it. So Seattle Atheist Church was founded on the principles of scientific naturalism and secular ethics. Truth claims are attempted here, and we stand ready to revise our thinking in light of new information. We attempt to be excellent to all conscious beings, and we believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. If that sounds good to you, then you are probably in the right place. So before we get started with our talk today, we have a couple of announcements. So if you would like to join us for the movie night, please sign up online. The movie is going to be I Am Not Your Negro, and you have to sign up in order to get the email with the information about where to meet us. Also, the second Sunday of the month after church, we'll have board games. Okay, so just keep that in mind that those things are happening. So the way we do church is the members ourselves give the talks, and then afterwards we have a conversation about the talk. And I'm really looking forward to this talk Wednesday. Thank you for coming from so far away. She's a member of our church, but she has moved away. And this is a talk on level 3 communication.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sadly, though I wish it were morning and I had more caffeine. So I wanted to give you, before I start talking specifically about the level 3 communications model, a little bit of background on where it's derived from and the principles around which it is based. It was created by a man named Richard Brody, who was an early Microsoft employee, headed the team that wrote the original Word way back. And he retired pretty early and just was feeling kind of generally unsatisfied with his life. And he went and did a bunch of self-help stuff and reading of self-help texts and gathering of information on what people tend to find brings happiness and gives value to lives. And he distilled that down and came up with a system of looking at life. And he talks about basically 3 levels of cognition. The first level being the survival, the lizard brain. We're born with these ingrained, here's how I will continue to exist in the evolutionary and social context in which I exist. Level 2 is the acculturation process. It's having a sense of your family history, and there's the memes that were fed socially. For those of you here or elsewhere on the internet who may not be aware, when I say memes, I'm not talking about the currently in wide usage colloquial meaning of memes. I'm talking about memes as they originally were labeled, which is related to the study of memetics, which is the analysis of the transmission of ideas through a populace, like we look at the transmission of genes through a populace. So it's similar to the study of genetics, where instead of genes, you have memes, and memes are the ideas, the concepts, the root, fundamental ideologies of a community.
One young cat.
Or, yes, if you're your age, young cat. But not in this specific usage. And so I don't know if any of you are familiar with Freire's work in literacy and the development of critical consciousness. But level 2 is very much the naive consciousness. There are things going on and you're aware that things are going on, but you're not really analyzing that, you're not thinking about it in a more engaged way. And then there's level 3, which is the in Brody's model, sort of highest level, the equivalent of the Freirean critical consciousness being achieved, where you're aware of the fact that we live in meme soup, and you're aware of the fact that we're very heavily shaped by our cultural context and by the environment in which we are raised. And he says that the only way that we can begin to be active critical participants in our own thought processes is by choosing which memes we ascribe to. And he lays out a process for this. Very simple 3-step process. He says, notice the memes, analyze what's there, separate yourself from them, detach from them as elements of your sense of self, so that you can look at them with a more critical eye and figure out your personal purpose, what you want to accomplish, what you want to achieve in your life, what your sort of higher thing is. And at that point, you can choose in a critically reasoned way which of the memes that we have floating in our miasma, that you wish to ascribe to, because either you find them fundamentally truthful, or you find them valuable to your purpose, or ideally both. Holding beliefs that are purely valuable to your sense of purpose and not ones that you consider truth and are not overlapped with the truthful ones is risky, sometimes valuable, but high risk. And so based on this idea of sequential triads of consciousness, triads of awareness of how you interact with memes within that consciousness, he built a system of communication based around these ideas. Because what he's talked about so far was very much internal. It was very much what you can do with your beliefs and your memes and your awareness. And all of that's very important. But it doesn't do much to help when you're trying to interact with other people. And he designed a similarly systematic approach to communication interactions between individuals. And basically there are 4 steps to this. And if I were over there, I'd write on the chalkboard, but there's not a chalkboard here. So, it won't be on the thing, so we'll do that after for the discussion in case people want to have it as a reference base. But thank you for the offer. So, the 4 steps are both an internal process and an external process. So, for myself personally, I will often have an experience and develop a lot of negative ick internally around it. And sometimes that experience is done. I'm never going to interact with that person again. There's never going to be an opportunity to communicate through it, to figure out what they were thinking or why they said what they said or whether they said what I heard. And at that point, I find it very valuable to run through this purely internally to come up with alternative options. But there's also a usage which I will model for you with the help of an assistant in a bit, that allows you to do it a little bit more actively as a meta-communication. So the steps he lays out are breaking down your understanding of an experience you had into several steps. He says, step 1 is perception. It's the observable, concrete things you experienced. Whether or not those are true in a metaphysical sense, whether there is a truth, not relevant. These are the concrete experiences I had without judgments and motives and meanings applied to them. If I run into someone as I'm walking down the street, I will say to myself, I perceive that that person and I collided. That is the concrete evidence there. There was a collision between these two bodies of mass. The second step is the stories we make up based on those perceptions. And this is a very, very key concept because it goes back to his idea of separating our mimetic context from our emotional context. And while they're intimately related, it's important to remember they're not the same. So when we make up a story based on a perception, we've got a lot of options because people are complicated and motivations are complicated, and there's an infinite number of explanations you could come up with for anything. And it's a bigger infinity if there's more than one person involved. And so the stories we make up are the models of motivations and the mental model of the other person. It's putting yourself sort of in their mental shoes and trying to shape and being aware of how you are default shaping your understanding. So one story that I could make up based on this collision of bodies is, wow, I make up the story that they were going really fast and not looking where they were going and didn't care about my physical body or the fact that I was walking there, and they were being really dismissive and they were like doing the taking up too much space thing and didn't want me to take up the amount of space that I deserve. Ugh, what a jerk. I could also make up the story that they were going really, really fast because they were really worried about getting somewhere on time, and like they had to get to, say, the birth of their first child, and they're like booking it down the sidewalk, and honestly, whether or not they bump shoulders with someone is the furthest thing from their mind, and it had nothing to do with me. I could also make up the story that I wasn't paying attention, that I was walking fast, that I was trying to get somewhere, that I was taking up more space than I was consciously thinking about. Or that I was listening to music and didn't realize I'd started dancing and happened to dance halfway into their path they'd already been walking along.
I totally feel you.
Right? And so you can see there's a huge range of potential explanations for any interaction. And those are all only my explanations. That doesn't even touch on their explanations. So the third step is analyzing what we feel. This is not what we feel as a result of the bodies colliding. What I feel as a result of the bodies colliding is maybe my shoulder aches a little bit if we ran into each other really hard. That's not the kind of feel we're talking about. We're talking about what we emotionally experience as a result of the story we make up. And that's really key, because it removes the entire socially supported concept of you make me feel X. No, you don't. You might have taken an action from which I make up a story that causes me to feel X, but it's really hard to be like self-righteous and angry and escalatory when you're that many steps removed from someone intentionally causing you pain. And it also gives you a lot more agency. I can choose to make up stories that are less tiring for me emotionally in different contexts. So I could walk around going, I make up this story about him taking up lots of space and the fact that he didn't care where I was walking and that he didn't actually want to pay any attention to where my body was and blah, 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 the really negative he's a jerk story. And I could feel frustrated and angry and devalued and resentful, and that's really, really tiring. And that's a lot to carry around all day because I ran into someone. And honestly, for me, I don't have the spare spoons to carry that much negativity in me. Got enough long-term negativity and neurochemical imbalances. I don't need all of that extra based on the story I make up. And I'm probably not going to see this person again. It's not like I'm going to have them slam into me every day for a week and then sit there deluding myself about their motivations. This is a one-time thing. For me, I find it less draining to go, okay, I'm going to choose to follow. This is the choosing what memes you ascribe to. I'm going to choose to go along with the story of mine, because they're all my stories, so I get to pick which one I like. And I'm going to choose to go along with the model of mine that says they were in a really big hurry and didn't mean any offense at all and actually weren't even aware and were probably freaking out. And as a result of that story, I feel compassionate and sympathetic, and I hope they really get where they're going on time. And, I really hope that everyone's okay, and I hope their shoulder doesn't hurt when they stop having the adrenaline rush and are aware of what happened again. And that's a pretty substantial emotional difference. But there's a fourth step to this one. It's not just a triad like the previous steps. The fourth step is intention. What you intend to do. And this one's hard, because it forces you to acknowledge your agency. And at least for me, I don't like doing that. It's so much easier if I can just be dragged along by my emotions. Or, you made me feel this, so I had to react like. That's a really comfortable place to sit. But it's not effective. And it's not gentle. And since effective and gentle are two things I personally really strive to be, it doesn't work super well for me. And so the intentionality element is very important in my mind. And sometimes the intention doesn't really particularly matter. Thank you, love. Sometimes the intention is, I intend to let it go because it wasn't that big a deal and I don't want to carry around the emotional labor of it all day. And that's fine. That can be a thing. Sometimes the intention is, I intend to approach this situation as compassionately and gently as possible. Because although there's a story that I make up that is very angry, there's also a story I make up that is very sympathetic, and I'd rather act from that one. And so you can also control the intention element when engaging with it on an individual level. But then there's the miscommunication bit. The bit where you've got more than one person actively involved and you're trying to work out a longer term interaction than just two ships passing in the night and one of them bumps the other. Hey, assistant. Come here for a sec. This is my lovely assistant, my sister Alex, or currently of Vaporeon, but same thing. And I asked her, and I want to clarify this, to be on her phone right now. I asked her to sit there in the audience listening to music with one earbud in, and I want to be very clear about that off the bat. Because she's a plant. And I don't want you to think negatively of her.
It's helpful because it means that I get to take more screenshots.
Yes, good job, sweetie. So, for the moment, I would ask you to set aside your phones so that we may have this conversation.
Yes.
So, I know a lot of this seems very scripted, very precise, and it is for a reason. Because I could say to her, man, you don't even care about my talk. You're just sitting there listening to something on your phone. I don't know why you even bothered coming. And then she'd probably say something defensive and nasty, and we'd have a...
What? No, I only had one earbud in. I was trying to take
Or she'd do that.
screenshots.
Or she'd go somewhere apologetic and scared and defensive. But there's not really a positive place that makes me feel better from that communication, and it makes her feel worse, and we go down the stereotypical sister rivalry path. Yeah, that. If we use the level 3 communications model, you can try and break it down without the labels. My ADD is too bad. If I try and break it down without the labels, I lose track of which step I'm on and I start blurring them together, and that's really risky because the whole point of this is this precise delineation and breakdown between perceptions, stories, and feelings. And intentions, yes. But like that one's sort of a little bit more distant than the other three. The other three tend to overlap a little more tightly. So, oi, yo, pocket your phone, kid. So, in our family, we do it really explicitly. Alex, may I talk with you about this in level 3? So, I perceive that I'm giving a talk at church, and that you were sitting in the audience with an earbud in looking at your phone. And I make up the story that you weren't caring about what I was saying, and that you didn't really want to be here supporting me, and that actually you just really didn't care all that much and only wanted to get like social credit for being in church. And I feel sad and hurt and a little bit resentful. And I intend to ask both for some reassurance from you that you actually do care about being here, and to ask if you have a potentially different story that might be less ouchy for me.
I was actually listening to you. I was just listening to the video that I had already memorized, so that I wasn't paying as much attention to them. And I only had one earbud in. I was actually still paying attention to her talk.
Would you be willing to also offer some reassurance?
Yes, you're a good talker.
Thank you, little one. You may return to your seat and your Hamilton. So, you can see.
I don't care about Google Duo.
A much more rigid, a much more structured and scripted communication that worked a lot better. Because I came away from that with a much more positive story. I came away from that with, oh, she's not ignoring me. She's part of my family. She probably also has ADD. It helps to be listening to something you're familiar with in one ear, to pay attention, at least if you're me. It's probably the case with her. And she did want to be here, and she thinks I'm doing a good job. So I've just gone from feeling hurt and sad and rejected to feeling proud and reassured and grateful and supported. And it didn't take 45 minutes of going back and forth about blame and hurt feelings and whose fault is this that this is being experienced. And that's really important. And there was a subtlety in what I did there, which was what I used the I intend for. Because you can use an I intend to be, I intend to ask if you want a hug. That's fine. But you can also use an I intend to promote them feeling comfortable sharing their level 3 communication structured experience. And that's really important because, as you saw, small human, young human, her response wasn't in the scripted form of level 3. She just spoke to what I'd said, which is totally fair. But I've had some big miscommunications, parental miscommunications, relationship miscommunications, where there were so many layers of negativity and complexity and stagnation and past triggers and just all of this sort of compounding on itself, that someone would, thinking that they were just responding to what I'd said, have all of this mass of other emotional content and stories and perceptions all bottled up and mixed up together. And one of the things I find most valuable about the I intend is the ability to say whatever you're phrasing, I intend to open a dialogue with you. Because that's where it becomes useful not only for mitigating miscommunication, but also for avoiding miscommunication, and clarifying and soothing. And as much as it is long and structured, and as much as I've been told by people in the past that it is unreasonable of me to ask them to use this communication, I will note that I've only been told this by people who would rather communicate with me through vitriol. Pretty much everyone else says, well, it might take me a bit to get the hang of it, but if it'll make you happier, then I'm willing to try. It's a lot. It's also, in the longer term, even if that longer term is only an hour of emotional labor, a lot less. Because you don't have to carry all of the emotional weight of miscommunication the entire time. You can get to the root of things. You can clarify the misunderstanding before it has time to fester and grow and build upon previous misunderstandings. And it has the potential to help you shape both your understanding in the moment and your actions going forward in ways that are more healing and healthy and productive, and will help you meet your goals and achieve your purpose in the long run. Thank you.